Hi guys, welcome to Vesna TV DIY. Today is another mega video and it's all Easter themed, so let's get going. So for this DIY, what I did was I took these carrot wood ornaments and I stuck them together, hot glued them together. I did 5 of them and I just used hot glue to stick them on and painted them out in this pumpkin orange, added some jute rope to it and added a few brown lines and made it kind of look like a carrot. And that's all there was to it, and really simple, really easy tier tray DIY that anyone can do for under $1 because these are 8 to a piece. Let me know what you think of the finished product. This next DIY is a little bit more involved, but I was going to purchase some orange burlap. However, I could not find it anywhere except for on Amazon, but I found it kind of pricey. Even Michael's didn't have it. And unfortunately, we only have Michael's here and some of the dollar stores, and none of them had it. So I decided to make my own alcohol ink and dye just regular burlap. So I'm just eyeballing this. I'm putting just enough alcohol in to the paint so that it makes the paint a little bit smooth but not too liquidy. And then I am just mixing it all together and I will just dip the burlap into it. The consistency of this was kind of like a thick, maybe like a milkshake or like buttermilk or something like that. Basically, if you add too much alcohol, rubbing alcohol, it'll dilute it a little bit too much so the color won't be so rich. But if you add a touch less, so I would just kind of start going little by little, and like you have to really do a good job mixing it so you can kind of see that it's thick at the bottom. So I just keep on mixing it until I get that consistency that I'm looking for. So because this was messy, I went to we have like a little workshop and a sink in there. So I went in there, but the lighting is really bad, so I didn't record it. I just dipped the burlap into there and then I rinsed it off because when I dipped it, because it was so thick, when I dipped it, the little holes from the burlap got clogged with the paint. But then I rinsed it off and it just gave me that nice rich orange color that I was looking for. I did do a second batch where I diluted it a little bit more, but it didn't give me such a rich color, so the thicker paint is better. You could always just buy alcohol ink. I just didn't want to go to the store. Because I wanted strips, I just cut these into strips and that's what I dyed. So here's what the pieces look like all dyed. So you can see some are a little bit darker and better than others. The best colored ones are the ones that I was telling you that it had a little bit of the thicker mixture. And so all I'm doing is taking that carrot that I had glued together and painted earlier in the video, and I'm just wrapping it around in the burlap, and then I'll be adding some green twine up at the top. Really easy, super easy, and really cute looking DIY carrot. Now, the only thing I'm not liking is that this burlap is kind of poor quality. I'm assuming it is from the dollar store, so that is probably why it's just kind of falling apart as I cut, like as I'm using it and working with it, it kind of falls apart. So it's I haven't had that happen too much before. I've had it happen a little bit, but this seems to be quite a lot. It was a new roll, so maybe it was just a bad batch. So as you can see, I wrapped the burlap around, and then I just went and I cut little strings and tie them together and hot glue them to the top. And then what I do is I like to always separate whether it's jute rope or twine, I like to separate the top. So it's really easy if you take the top of your rope and you just kind of start pulling it apart, especially if you get like the right string, it pulls apart and then it looks like it's a lot more pieces than it is. And it just makes it a little bit easier than having to glue that many pieces, and then it looks like curly leaves. I'll show you what this looks like at the end, but for the next carrot, I am taking a piece of poster board. Now this is in between poster board and like Bristol board and poster board. It's a little bit softer than Bristol board, but a little bit harder than construction paper. So I do wind up kind of using a roll of paper towel cardboard in there as well, just to make it a bit harder. And I'm kind of making the shape of a carrot with this and just hot gluing it together. You could use white glue or Mod Podge. I just decided to use hot glue because I had it heated and I figured that would be the quickest. And I did the same thing. I wrapped the burlap around, covering mostly one side. I wasn't too concerned about covering the back of this. I did go with orange paper so that you wouldn't be able to see through it at the, in case I missed a spot, or in case the burlap was a little bit more see-through in one spot than was the other. And like I said, I wasn't too concerned about doing all of the sides. I made sure just one side was really nice, like kind of the front and sides were really nice and the back was partially covered. And this was mostly because I was kind of running low on burlap and I still wanted to do a large carrot. If you had the burlap on hand, you could wrap it all around. It doesn't really matter. It's whatever you want. I use these in tray decor, so it'll be facing back anyway, so you won't be able to see the back. And I did the same strategy where I attached the green string up at the top, and then I took little bits. Well, sorry, I didn't do green string this time. I did jute rope, and then I separated it, so you'll see how that looks at the end. So here are both carrots all completed. For this DIY, what I did was I took some clothespins and I'm going to be making them into carrots. Now, I had made these when we went on our Disney cruise as a part of some sort of decor thing. I don't remember, but I participated in all of the fish extender groups and all that stuff, so I think I was a part of something that I had made. I don't even remember anymore. But anyway, I made them like Mickey themed, but I wasn't using them for that now, so I took them apart and I hot glued them together so that they looked like they were in the shape of a carrot. So basically like flip them over. After I hot glued all of them together, I went ahead and I painted them out in this pumpkin orange acrylic paint. I painted almost the entire thing. I just left a little bit over on the top. So if you guys haven't been to my channel, my name is Vesna. This is my DIY channel. I actually have 3 channels altogether. I have a cooking channel and a home channel. On the cooking channel, fairly simple, I provide you guys with recipes that are usually family friendly, and on the home channel I display all of these DIYs that I made. So I'll be having a home tour video this weekend coming out. It'll be a spring home tour video, and then I will be doing an Easter home tour video. So if that's the kind of stuff you like, make sure you subscribe to those 2 channels. On my DIY channel, again, straightforward, I do DIYs, home decor DIYs. I do some renovations that I do over on the home channel, but for the DIY, I do trash or treasure, thrift flips, furniture flips, dollar store flips, all sorts of home decor items on a budget that I like to display in my house. Sometimes they're very much holiday themed, and other times they're just DIYs that you can have as decor in your home. So if that's the kind of stuff you like, make sure you subscribe to my DIY channel. It would be great if you could subscribe to all three and watch all three. Hopefully you could get inspired. So if you have not subscribed, please hit that big subscribe button. Let me know that you did by leaving me a comment, hit that big like button, and also hit the notification bell so that you can see when I post new videos. Thank you. Once they were painted, I went ahead and I had bought this green twine from the Dollar Tree, so I just hot glued the tip of it to the top of the clothespin, and then I wrapped it around so that it looked like it was the top of a carrot. That's what I did with the first one, and then what I did was I put a few pieces together so that it looked like it was, you know, the leaves of the carrot at the top hanging off. And then for the next ones, I wound up kind of doing it the reverse way. I did the strings first, and then I did the ribbon or the twine around. Either way works. I just found this way to be a little bit easier, especially because I was making a few of them. So I actually created these for a few of my DIYs in this video, so it kind of goes together with a few projects. So here's what they look like on their own. So I will be using the carrots in this DIY, and what I'm doing for this one is I'm taking a piece of burlap, I would say about 6 inches of it, and I'm cutting it down, and I'm going to make 2 pieces of it, maybe a little bit less than 6 inches, maybe like 4 inches. And I'm going to be hot gluing it together. You can make this as big or as small as you want. And I hot glue it, and then I flip the sack inside out. And like I said, I'm making a little sack in here. And this is what's going to hold my carrots. The reason I'm flipping it inside out is because it'll make it look seamless. And then I also cut down the sides so that I can have the one end kind of flopped inside. Originally I was just going to write in carrots 5 cents on this, but I didn't like the way it looked on it, so then I wound up doing a little label for it, just using a piece of paper, and I'll show you how I did that. But before I show you that, I do go ahead and I stuff the little bag just with, I put a little bit of leftover jute twine and burlap and whatever, just little scrap pieces of that stuff in there, and then I flap over that top that I cut so that it covers it so you can't see, and then that's how my bag is stuffed. For the label, I'm just using a scrap piece of printer paper. Now I did buy the recycled printer paper, so it's a little bit more yellow than white, which is great for this project. I'm painting it over in the warm white acrylic paint from the Dollar Tree. It's more like an ivory white, kind of like an antique white. And I'm just giving it a nice good coat of it, and then I'll let it dry. And then instead of cutting it, what I do is I just rip it off so it looks, so the edges kind of look aged and frumpy. I do put my carrots in there, and then I'm just measuring out how big I need to rip it. So I just do that, and then I write in carrots 5 cents. I do it with a pencil first, and then I do it with a Sharpie, and I hot glue it to the little bag, and that's all there is to this one. So here's the bag all finished. Here I'm making another kind of picture frame. I found these little wood planks at the Dollarama. They were only $1.25, so for a package of 4. And I also found these dowels, which were, I guess, a package of about 13, 14 in there. Those were a little bit more, but they're kind of like square dowels, which I thought was kind of neat. So I'm going to be using both, and I'm going to be making like just like a little picture frame. So I'm using the thinner dowels, and I'm just measuring out to see how big I need to cut them, and I am using just a power saw to cut these. So I cut them to what I need them, and then I go ahead and just kind of look to plan it out to make sure that they'll fit nice around it, and I go ahead and I stain them. For the stain, I am using the Rust-Oleum glaze in Java as my stain. I love using this for my stain. Once I stain them, I set them off to the side and I go ahead to work on my plank. I'm just using some leftover white paint. I think it was white with like a touch of pink in there, but very, very pale, not. It was just like a drop of pink because it was on the brush. And I'm just painting out the plank in that color. It didn't really matter that it had that little tint of pink because I go over it in black anyway. So originally I wanted it to look kind of like barn boards. So what I did was I drew in these lines, and then I used my Sharpie, and that's where I made the mistake. It was too fake looking in my opinion, so I didn't like the way it looked. So I wound up trying to kind of tone it down with a little bit of brown. I still didn't like it, so I wound up painting it all in black. So I thought I was just going to distress it a little bit, but then I wound up just painting the whole thing in black to get rid of that Sharpie, and I actually like the way it looked this way better. So after I painted it in black, I went ahead and I just used an X-Acto knife to cut lines down just 2 lines in the plank to make it look a little bit like barn board. And then I went and I painted over top of it with that warm white that I was using in my previous projects. And I sanded everything down a little bit, and I just really wanted it to look a little bit aged and dinged up and had all sorts of colors coming through. So once I got the colors that I was looking for, I let that dry, and then I went and I hot glued my frame on to the little plank, and then I added some carrots that I also purchased from the Dollar Tree and wrote carrots 5 cents, and that's all there is to this one. For this next DIY, I'm taking some of those carrots that I had made, and I am just cutting them in half. I have these little miter shears, and I'm also then just cutting them on an angle, so you can just turn it to have any angle that you want. And so I'm just cutting them on an angle to make them look a little bit like a carrot, and then I'm going to be using them in the next DIY that I make. So I just wind up putting a little bit more orange onto them for the parts that kind of got chipped. And then the little parts that I cut off, I also make mini carrots out of those. And I just glue the green tops to them as well. So I just take a piece of string, I tie it together, and then I hot glue it to the top. So I got these little pieces of wood. They're like little square dowels from Dollarama, and they came in a package, I believe, of about 15, but they were all different widths. So I'm taking the thinner widths and I am cutting, these are two. I'm cutting two of them in half to make a frame. Once I have them cut, I've hot glued them together to make a little frame. I then just paint them with that leftover white paint that I used for that previous project, just to have the frame be a little bit white and a little bit distressed. I just distressed the frame a little bit using some black acrylic paint together with that warm white, just to give it a bit of an antiqued look. And then I hot glue the carrots to it, and that's all there is to this DIY. I attached two pieces of string horizontally to the back of the frame with some hot glue, but then decided that I don't like the way that looks, so I just attached them vertically. But unfortunately my camera stopped recording, so I don't have that on camera, but I'll show you what it looks like finished with the carrots then glued to that clothesline. So for today's episode, I'm working with a whole bunch of different items to create kind of like an Easter vignette. So I'm using this dry clay. So this was actually from a fossils kit that my son had, and where he had to scrape off some dry clay to find a fossil. So I kept this clay because I thought it would be perfect for the concrete effect. Then I've got this guy. So the theme is concrete for today. So then I've got this guy, which I bought at Value Village for $2.99, but I think he's from the dollar store, and he was probably $2 or $3 anyway, brand new, but I didn't see them when I got this, so maybe I overpaid at the thrift store, but that's okay. And I'm going to be, even though I think he's kind of rustic, I want him to look like he's concrete. So hopefully this works out, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. And then I've got an egg that I'm also going to make look kind of concrete and textured, which again will be great for the tray. And then I've got these are the candy carrots from Dollar Tree or Dollarama. They've got candy in there, so I'll dump the candy. And then I'm gonna make a nice little decor piece out of those. So that's it. So these are the materials I'll be using. Now, in addition to that, I'm gonna be using some silver metallic paint, some black acrylic paint, and a silver morning paint. I will be using all of those to try and get the concrete effect. I may, because I like to throw in blue. I might throw that in as well. We'll see. What I do is I kind of get mixing and then I do it. But first, welcome to Vesna TV DIY. I'm Vesna. Thank you so much for joining me today. So I thought I'd start the episode off with mixing the paints, because this is the paint that I will be using for all of the three pieces. So I'm using the silver metallic, the other silver color, as well as some black acrylic paint and a little bit of that blue I do wind up using. And I mix enough so that I have enough to cover the pieces and a little bit left over, because I'm going to be using it in another project later on this week. So I am mixing it in a cup that I can reuse and actually close so that it doesn't dry out. And again, I'm mixing in that clay, which you could substitute with sand or baking soda, anything kind of that has texture to it. So let's start off with the first DIY. I'm actually going to start off with spray painting the carrots in this satin heirloom white from Rust-Oleum, and I'm actually going to spray paint the bunny in this color as well. And I had to first get rid of the sugar from these carrots because they're actually candies and I just love the shape of them. So I got rid of the sugar, spray painted them in the white, and this is what they look like. So as you can see, I didn't cover them 100% completely. There's still a little bit of the orange showing through. And I did this because I will be applying the concrete and they didn't need to be covered completely. I just didn't want so much of the orange showing through. You can by all means cover them completely, up to you. And then I start applying the concrete. I'm using just a floral foam to stick these on, and I'm using small paintbrushes, and I'm putting them on these small paintbrushes, and I am going to be painting it. This just makes it a little bit easier to paint, and I'm using the dabber brush from the Dollar Tree. It's like a stenciling brush, and this gives me that effect of a little bit of texture, and I'm just covering it completely in the concrete color that I created. I do like to help them dry with a hair dryer. And once they are dry, you can see they're falling over and they're completely dry. I use a brush to just dry brush some white onto them just to give them a little bit more of a concrete look. And I'm using the Rust-Oleum chalked linen white paint because it is a matte color and it'll get rid of a little bit of the shine from the acrylic paint. And again, when you dry brush, you want to get a little bit of paint on your brush and dab it off on a paper towel and then just apply lightly. And once you get the coverage that you're looking for, let it dry, and then I'll show you the next step. So once all of this dried, I'm using some twine as well as little bits of green from a pick from the Dollar Tree, and I'm cutting them in half. So I cut off a branch and then I cut the little pieces in half from the branch, and I'm using 2 of them in each of these carrots, and I will be hot gluing them. I'm just kind of testing them out right now to make sure they fit nice. And then I'll be wrapping the top of the carrot with the jute, with the twine, and then I'll be inserting these guys in there, applying a little bit of hot glue on the inside so that way it all kind of sticks together. Now I'm not going to make you watch the whole thing. I'll have you watch a little bit and then I'll show you what they look like when they're done. And so here they are, all finished. They're going to look amazing in my tray. I love this concrete effect. They're not your traditional orange carrots, which I still love. I still love the orange carrots too, but I really think this is beautiful. Let me know what you guys think. And off to the next DIY. This next one is super easy. I got a pack of these 4 large eggs, as I mentioned, from Dollarama, and I will just be making this egg look like it's concrete. I'm just going to dab it on with that same brush that I was using, the same stencil brush that I was using for the carrots, and I'm going to let it dry, and then I will dry brush some white on it and just give it a lot of texture, and that's about it. Again, another great addition to my tray, and it looks gorgeous. And I think these ones, if you bought those concrete eggs, sometimes they have them, they're quite expensive. So this is a great alternative. I think it was $2 for the 4 large eggs. And the last DIY or upcycle is this bunny, which again, I'm going to spray paint with that Rust-Oleum antique heirloom paint. And I'm going to cover him a lot, but not like super covered so that he's completely white, because again, I want him to look like he's concrete. So this is kind of what that looks like right here. He's been covered, but not, like I said, not completely, because I am using now a slightly different brush, but I will switch to the stencil brush again for this guy. And I'm just getting him all in all of the creases and everywhere, covering him up as much as I can before he dries so that I can also dry brush him with the white as well. I don't think I mentioned this before, but because the paint is so thick, you will need to make sure that you give it a good amount of time to dry. So if you need to speed it up, like I did with the hair dryer, you can do that, or whatever you need to do to speed it up, you can do it, but just so you know that it will take a little bit of time to dry. And then again, once it is nice and dry, you can use a more matte paint and just dry brush it all over this cute little bunny, and he'll look like he's concrete. I really, really love the way he turned out. So here he is all finished. So I saw this truck on the Kirkland's website, and I thought it was really cute. It was about 15 bucks, I think. Regardless, we don't have a Kirkland's here, so to have it delivered to Canada and shipped and all of that stuff, even if I'm not even sure if they do shipping, but it would be quite expensive. So I thought, well, this sign would just do the trick. So the sign is from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just taking it apart. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sand off the glitter, and I'm going to cut off the carrots and the bunny's butt. And then I'm going to wind up reusing everything. I'm just going to do it a little bit differently. I don't love that the paper ripped off the carrots, but I'll just wind up repainting them and cutting them out to just to look like a better shaped carrot. And I'm just using an X-Acto knife for all of this, and then I'm sanding and kind of cutting down all the parts that are loose and not looking the best. And like I said, I'll be reusing everything. I may wind up, when I was doing this, I thought I was going to wind up using all of the carrots, but I don't wind up using all of them, but I do save them for different projects just in case, because I always do that. So once I clean everything up, it's time to paint it. So I sand down a little bit more of the Happy Easter and the tires just to get the glitter off so I can paint over it. I wind up painting black over top of the tires and this Paradise Blue for the truck. So I'm keeping it pretty much blue like it was before. I'm just giving it a little bit more depth and color and kind of getting rid of the shininess because I really don't like the glitter. So just do a light coat over top of the truck in the blue, and then I wind up coloring the entire tire in black. Once the truck is all painted, I add some of the white acrylic paint just around the edges and the tires and kind of where the door would be. And I'm doing this because I want it, like I said, to have a little bit of more character than it did before and to look more farmhousey, rustic type of look to it. Once that's done, I go ahead and fix up the carrots and just touch up the bunny's butt. For the carrots, I'm adding this pumpkin orange, and I'm using it with a brush that has a little bit of brown on it that I didn't wash. So it gives it more of a darker kind of orange, not such a bright orange look, but more like a rustic aged orange or a burnt orange. And I'm just doing the paint over top of these carrots. And then I use the leaf green for the top. And for the bunnies, but I'm just painting it over with some white acrylic paint. Again, just to get rid of so much of that shininess and just to kind of mute some of the pink so it's not so in your face shiny and bright. Once that's all dry and ready to go, I attach my carrots to the pickup truck. I just hot glue them at the back, and I just dry brush a little bit of black over top of the truck and then wipe it off with a wet wipe. And this is just to give that truck a more of a dirty kind of rustic feel to it. I like the way it looked just blue, but I thought it was a little bit too new looking, so I thought the black would add a little bit more. I'm using my new glue gun, which I talked about in my previous video, which I can link here, and it's working really well. And I'm just using that to hot glue the carrots, and then I hot glue the bunny's bum at the end. And then I decided that instead, the Kirkland's dupe that I saw was it standing on its own, but I had done something like that with another spring DIY that I did. So this one I wanted it to hang on one of my doors. When you come into my house, I have two doors. One is to the bathroom, one is to the outside. So I wanted it on the bathroom door. So I just attached some jute rope to the back. So that's all there is to this guy. Really easy to do. Very inexpensive. It cost me $1.25 because I am in Canada and these things are $1.25 at the Dollar Tree, not $1. And here's the dupe. I think I nailed it. Like I said, it was a stand on its own, but I wanted it as a plaque, so that's the only difference. If you wanted to have this exact replica, you could easily use a paint stir stick at the bottom, paint it black, and attach this guy to that. But here it is, completed. Love the way it turned out. Basically, if you thought the last DIY was easy and expensive, this one is even easier. It's a little bit more costly just because we don't have lamb's ears at our Dollar Trees, but if you can find them at Walmart or at Dollar Tree for a cheap cost, I always stock up on them because they're good to have. So what I'm doing is I have this galvanized pot that I bought at the thrift store for $2. And I am going to be making it a little bit more galvanized rustic looking. And I do this just by combining some colors. Now this pot is from Dollarama, so I think it was $4. So you can get it brand new if you don't find it at the thrift store. You can also find them without the little ropes, and I think those ones are even cheaper, but I came across this. It was $2. It wasn't too bad, and it already had the jute rope, so I loved it. So I'm combining a few colors. I'm combining dark blue, black, gray, and white. And I'm just dabbing colors as I go. And this is how I've made plenty of galvanized look type of pots. So I can link one of the most recent ones. I believe it's a Christmas one that I did up at the top, and you can check that out. There's also a Valentine's Day one where I made wood look like galvanized steel, so check that out. I'll link the two videos up here. And once I do that and get the look that I'm going for, I just assemble the flowers in it, and that's my dupe. Now for the flowers, I did get these on Amazon, and these lamb's ears. So they were the most expensive part of my project. I believe I got 4 stems for about $13, so it's a little bit more than I would spend. But the stems were, so this is from one stem. These 2 little stems are from one stem. So the stems went quite a long way. And then I'm just adding these lavender bits from Dollar Tree. Now, as you can see, some of them I've already used for other projects. So I would say there's about $3 worth of floral in here, plus maybe another $2 for the lamb's ears. So you're looking at about $5 for the floral and $2 for the basket. So it's about $7. A little bit, like I said, it's not as cheap, as inexpensive as the other one, but still fairly inexpensive, especially compared to the dupe, which was quite a bit more. So here is the dupe, and like I said, I think mine is pretty close. So it costs $24.99. Again, that's American, and I'm talking about Canadian dollars. And that's what the dupe looks like. And here's my completed arrangement. I think I am pretty close to what Kirkland's made. I'm going to be using this Dollar Tree wooden bunny, and I'm just going to be painting him out using some Rust-Oleum chalked linen white paint, and I will be decorating him as well. Really simple DIY. You just paint over it and that's it, and I will be using him likely in my tray. Before I start painting him, I use a little bit of putty. Well, I start painting him and then I realize that I want to use a little bit of wood filler, not putty, wood filler, to fill in that hole as best as I can so that it's not so visible, because I won't be hanging him up. Once he's painted, I go ahead and I use just a pencil to write hippity hop on the bunny, and then I use a Sharpie to go over top of it. I only had to do 1 coat of the paint as the wood itself is quite light. Originally I thought I would add a bow to the bunny, and I was going to use this ribbon from the Dollar Tree, but then I went against, well, I decided that I didn't want to use this ribbon after kind of making a little bow and looking at what it looks like. I had bought this because to me it was like a very Easter ribbon, but I really didn't like the way it looked on the bunny, so I went against it and went back to using a combination of burlap and twine. I found the self-adhesive burlap ribbon or border or whatever it is at the Dollar Tree, and I've been liking to use this for several things, mostly bows. So what I did was I cut off a piece and then I made like little loops and then I attached them together because they're self-adhesive, so I just stuck them together and then I hot glued them to the bunny. Basically, I wanted it to look like it had a layered bow, just kind of where his ears are. That's all there is to this little guy, so here he is all finished. This next piece is a trash to treasure item. I have these planks that I've shown you before. I'm nearing my last one or second last one, I think, and I'm just going to be cutting it out to make a tall enough plank that will go sit nicely in my tray. I've gone ahead and I've drawn a bunny on here. I just freehand drew it. I didn't trace it or anything like that. I looked at a picture on the internet and I kind of got the idea from there. And then I'm going to be cutting it right there, but because my kids were sleeping, I didn't want to cut and be noisy. So I went ahead and I painted and I did everything before I cut it. I'm painting the plank in the Rust-Oleum Serenity blue color. I'm really liking this color lately, and I think it's such a beautiful pastel-y blue color, perfect for Easter. So if you guys are brand new to my channel, thank you so much for stopping by. On my channel you can see all sorts of budget-friendly DIYs, trash to treasure items, Dollar Tree makeovers, thrift flips, all sorts of home decor things that you can do on a budget that you can find on my channel. So if you haven't subscribed, make sure you hit that big subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and leave me a comment below letting me know that you've subscribed and that you've stopped by. That would be greatly appreciated. Once that dried, I went ahead and I painted the inside in a white color. I mean, I had to be very careful. You should probably use a stencil. I could have just cut out a piece of vinyl, stuck it on. I should have used my Cricut, but I wanted to freehand draw it and just show you that, you know, with a little bit of patience, you can achieve, you know, like nice lines without having these expensive machines. So I just carefully went and I painted white inside. If you were using a stencil, what I would recommend is you paint everything the white color, then put your stencil on, and then paint everything the blue color, and then you'll have a perfect seamless bunny. After he was all painted and dried, I went ahead and I attached just a little pink pom-pom as his tail. And here he is. For this DIY, here are the materials I used. I used burlap, a piece of cardboard, one of these little bunnies that came in a package of 8. They're little wooden bunnies. They're ornaments, I believe. Some twine ribbon, jute ribbon, and some jute rope. And then I was debating on using this dot fabric or the checkered fabric. You'll see I tried using the checkered fabric, the dot fabric, and then I switched to the checkered fabric. This piece of cardboard is from a lid from an Amazon box, and what I do is I measure it, and I mean there's no definite measurement. I just kind of look at how I want the bunny sitting, and I want to cut out like a little upside down V shape or at the bottom so it looks like it's like a flag, and I measure it from that way, and I kind of fidget around with it until I get the angle that I want. You'll see me play around with it. I like to eyeball things, so I don't always measure, and I change my mind halfway through the project of how I want it to look. So you'll see that I'm playing around with it. It was just more of getting a nice straight line is what I was trying to do. And then once I wound up getting it to the way that I liked it, I stuck with it. So if you are a planner, then just measure out how big you want your V to be at the bottom. So I'm only like this when I have materials that are like trash items, so like a piece of cardboard that I have lots of or something like that. I don't do it with things that I've purchased or that I don't have a lot of material of. It's just things that I can kind of be a little bit frivolous with. So once I got the shape and size that I wanted, I went ahead and I cut a piece of burlap to just kind of overhang over top of the cardboard. And then I attached it using Mod Podge. I didn't want to use hot glue because that can kind of come out through the little holes of the burlap, and I don't like the way that looks. So I use Mod Podge, which dries nicely and clear, and I don't have to worry about it. So I applied a nice coat at the bottom just to glue it on. I attached the excess burlap to the other side of the cardboard, and then I went and painted the bunny, and I just painted him in a acrylic paint. I was using the just white acrylic paint. Then I set that off to dry, and then with the cardboard that was left over, I just cut out 2 circles in the shape of eggs, and then I wound up covering them in the dotted fabric. I glued it on, and then I remembered I wanted to put a bow up top, and I wanted the bow to match the eggs, and realized I didn't have enough fabric, so I went back and I covered it with the checkered fabric. However, I had already hot glued it onto the cardboard and had stuck really well, so if I ripped it, I would have ripped everything. And I actually wasn't even able to rip it without like ripping the entire cardboard and burlap and everything. So I just hot glued the fabric on top and cut it using a fabric cutter around as best as I could. So in hindsight, I should have just planned better. I don't know what I was thinking. I have no idea. I think I just forgot about the bow at the top that I wanted to make. And then once I made it with just the jute rope, I realized that I needed a little bit more and that I was going to use the fabric to match it, and yeah. So, you know, just sometimes I get crafting and my mind kind of gets ahead of myself and forget to I forget what I wanted to do originally. I was for a while planning and cutting out pictures and everything like that. And this one I did. I drew it out. I just forgot that I wanted to have that fabric to match. So you can see here. It was a big pain to do it this way. So either rip it apart or think before you do this, just don't make the same mistake. So the checkered fabric is from the Dollar Tree. I got it at Christmas time. I've seen this checkered fabric at Walmart. Like the buffalo check is popular, so you can get it anywhere. But this was a good deal because it was from the Dollar Tree. I don't know if they have it all year round. I basically got the entire box that they had, and I split it with my sister and another friend of ours because I knew that if I didn't get everything, it would be gone by the next day, just because our Dollar Tree seems to get very limited supplies of stuff and things go really fast. Once I finished fumbling around with the eggs, I attached the fabric to the bow and then I hot glued the bunny to the bottom of the little flag and I added a little bow to the bunny. I also wound up adding jute rope to the bow, and as well a little piece of jute rope string to the back of the flag so it looks like it could be hung. And I added just like a little ball of jute rope as the bunny's tail. Here he is all finished. So this is a super easy one. I'm taking this package of eggs from the Dollar Tree, and it's a package of 6 eggs. I'm going to dump these eggs and I'm going to spray paint the carton in just a black spray paint that I have on hand. I'm not going to record myself spray painting it, but just any old black paint will do. Then once it's spray painted, I just add a little bit of the cashmere tan acrylic paint from the Dollar Tree around. I just dry brush it lightly, and I glue in the eggs back and wait for it to all dry. I do use hot glue to glue them in, and I will show you. I got a new hot glue gun, and I'll show it to you in a little bit. It's a cordless one. I was looking for a cordless one, but I don't have the Ryobi battery, so to buy the battery and the glue gun and the chargers, it would have been way too expensive. So I just bought this one on Amazon, and it seems to be working pretty well. Once all of that's done, I cut these little strips just from black construction paper, and I'm going to be having that as my banner around the eggs. And I'll use my Cricut to write in farm fresh eggs, 25 cents. And then I will be hot gluing that to the container as well, and I'll be adding some deer moss as well. And I just use the Cricut font, and for the Farm Fresh, I did about 1/2 inch tall, and then for the eggs, I did about 0.6 tall, just a little bit bigger than the Farm Fresh, and the strips were about 1 inch wide, and just long enough to cover the container. And I was really excited because I used the vinyl from the Dollar Tree. They finally got Cricut supplies. I was so excited to see them there. And I used the permanent white vinyl, and it worked just fine. I did not use the transfer paper because I already had a pack going of the transfer paper from Amazon, so I will be using that next time. But this worked really well, and it looks fine. And it looks great. It cut really nicely. I just used the vinyl setting. It didn't rip, and it was a nice small font, and it did a really great job, so I'm happy with it. And you can't beat the deal. So here's the glue gun that I purchased. It's the Genesis glue gun. It's cordless, and it came with a gun, some glue sticks, a charger, and a lithium battery. And if you wanted to get another lithium battery, I believe they're about 20 bucks, not too bad. It takes about 4 hours for it to charge fully, and then it lasts quite a bit. I charged it fully, and I used it, for a couple minutes, and it still has juice in it. So I used it for, a couple projects, and it still had juice in it. So as I use it more, I will let you know what I think of it. So far, I'm really liking it. Again, I purchased this off of Amazon on my own. I just kind of looked at reviews to see what the best deal and what the best reviews were, and this is the one that I chose. So back to the project, I then used this glue gun to glue down the moss as well as the Farm Fresh. And I just wanted it to look like it was wrapped around, so I just glued it at the sides, and I did this for both, and then I just added moss in between, and that's all there is to this project. Really easy. It cost $1.25. I guess if you included the vinyl too, so $2.50. I'm in Canada, so everything is $1.25 at the Dollar Tree, although they've just raised prices to $1.50, which makes me a little bit sad for some things, but oh well. So really inexpensive to do. Just need a little bit of paint and this egg carton container, and then you could even write these in if you didn't have a Cricut. I just wanted to use my new vinyl. And here it is, all completed. Love the way it turned out. I will be using it in my tray. If you want to see how I've displayed any of these items, as well as my other Easter items and spring items, please make sure you check out my video, which will be live at 4 p.m. Eastern time today over on my home channel. I'm doing a home Easter spring home tour. I already did a mini spring home tour, and now I'm doing an Easter tour so you can see how I've incorporated my Easter decor. This next project is a little bit more involved, but again, fairly inexpensive to do and very easy, just maybe a little bit more time consuming. So what I'm doing is I'm using this large Easter egg sign from the Dollar Tree. And I'm going to be painting the back instead of the front. I'm going to leave the front as is because it has a lot of the sparkles, so this will save me some time so I don't have to scrape them off. So I'm going to be painting it in the Rust-Oleum Chalked Linen White paint. But I'm only doing half of it because the other, well, actually 3/4 of it, because the other part of it will be covered in burlap. I'm only doing one coat. The chalk paint is pretty good at covering when it's a lighter color underneath, and even sometimes with a darker color it's pretty good at covering, but I only need one coat. And again, when you paint with the chalk paint, you don't have to worry about brush strokes. It all winds up looking really great at the end. So once it's painted, I just add 2 strips of burlap at the bottom. I hot glue them down, and I just wrap it slightly around, like just a little bit longer than the egg, so that I can make sure that I'm covering everything. So if you're brand new to my channel, thank you so much for stopping by. Here you can see all sorts of Dollar Tree DIYs, Trash to Treasure DIYs, thrift flips, upcycles, kind of anything that's inexpensive and home decor related I do. I have a pretty rustic farmhousey type of style, so if that's the kind of stuff you like, make sure you check out my other videos, subscribe. If you haven't subscribed, hit that notification bell so you can see new videos. Give me a big thumbs up and let me know that you've subscribed so I can say hi. Once this is done, I use the nautical rope. I was going to use jute rope, but this was a little bit thicker, so it was a bit nicer. And I do 2 rows of the nautical rope around the egg just to give it a little bit of a frame or border. And again, I hot glue them using my glue gun, my new glue gun. And once that's done, I go ahead and I decorate it. But before I decorate, I have to cut off those strips of burlap that are overhanging that I left to make sure that it covered everything. So I just do that using some scissors, and then I go ahead and I decorate it. And I'm decorating using this bunny. This bunny is also from the Dollar Tree. It was a pack of 8, I believe, ornaments. And they've gone a long way. I've used them in lots of my projects. Again, that'll be linked. The home tour will be linked here, and I can link the Easter playlist as well at the end. And I am just staining this bunny using the Annie Sloan dark wax, and I'm using this because it dries really fast and I was a little bit short on time, and it does a great job staining. But I've been using the Rust-Oleum glaze, but that one is a little bit liquidy, so it takes just a little bit longer to dry. This is, you know, once I wipe it off, it's pretty much ready to go. It's a bit sticky, but it's not, it doesn't stay on your fingers or anything like that, so I can pretty much use it right away. And I'm trying to use up, as you can see, I've pretty much used everything in the tin, but I still have a little bit left. I also just added a few of these black lines just to give the egg an illusion of it being kind of like on barn board or something like that. And then I hot glue this little bunny to the egg. I add some of the eucalyptus leaves from the Dollar Tree as well as the lavender stems to the bottom of the bunny, and then at the top I try to give him a little bit of a bow using some of the moss ribbon and burlap. So here he is all finished. I think he turned out really cute. Again, another fairly easy DIY. Like I said, it's a little bit more time consuming because there's a bit more involved, but really easy and looks great in my Easter decor. This next project I'm making because I wanted to do something in my cloche, and I am using just a lid from a container, a plastic container of food. I can't remember which one. And I am just going around with my burlap ribbon and I'm taping it down, and then I'm going to add some moss into this container. I'm going to hot glue it down, and then I'll hot glue 3 of these eggs that look like robin's eggs, and that's going to be my decor. Again, you can see it in my home tour video. So there it is. This is quite possibly the simplest little DIY that I've ever created, and it turned out really great. I'm loving the way it looks. I was going to add moss to the sides, but then I left it because I will be putting moss into the cloche, and that'll cover the burlap so you can't see it quite so much. That's it. There it is, and that's all there's to it. This next project was easy enough to do, but it drove me a little bit nuts. So I realized I don't have a lot of patience for really like fine motor type of things. So I'm using these eggs. They're just larger Easter eggs, and there is 4 of them in a package, and I'm going to be doing them all in a different way. This way you can see kind of, you have options of what you could do if you're stuck on ideas. So the first one I'm going to decorate using old book pages, and I am just using this book that I'm no longer using anymore, and I'm just ripping off pages into little strips, and then I'll be Mod Podging it to one of the eggs. So as I'm putting the Mod Podge and the paper on, I realize I don't like that in some places a lot of the white is showing, so I just kind of overlap with the writing until I get the egg of my choice. And that's all there is to this one. Again, really easy to do, really easy to make, and it'll look great in my tray. The next egg is again really easy to do. I'm just going to be painting it out. I'm going to be using a combination of colors. I'll use the warm white, the tan, or the cashmere tan, and then I'll use a little bit of green as well. And I like to just mix colors until I get kind of the color that I'm looking for. I wanted this egg to kind of look like, not a duck egg, but just like a kind of a darker egg with some whites in it. So as you can see, I've mixed the tan with the green in here, and it's giving me that darker color. So I'll paint that out first, and then once it dries, I dry brush over it with the white. I'm not too worried about covering it perfectly, like I said, because I'll be using a little bit of both, and that'll give me the look that I'm looking for. So this next egg was the one that was a little bit more finicky than I like them to be. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using I'm wrapping half of the egg in the brown twine, and then about a quarter of the egg in the green twine, and then I'm painting the top in the warm white and the bottom in just a green color. I unfortunately ran out of space on my phone when I was recording, so it didn't record me wrapping the jute twine because it took me a really long time. Like I said, I don't like this kind of finicky stuff, so I'm not very good at it. So what I did was I used Mod Podge to glue on the twine because it was so thin. I was afraid to use the hot glue and burn myself. And I think this is why it was so finicky, because I had to kind of make sure that it was staying in one spot while I was wrapping it. What I should have done is hot glued the first, like the starting point, and then done the Mod Podge, but I was trying something different, so I know that I won't do it this way again. I'll just use hot glue and we'll maybe wear thick gloves or something so I don't, because even the finger protectors don't always work just because of the way I'm holding it. So live and learn, but it turned out okay. This is probably my least favorite one, but it turned like it's okay. It's fine. I just wanted to try something different. It'll still go great in my decor. It'll give just a pop of Easter in one of my trays. So funny enough, for my last DIY, I think my sister posted a video this morning where she was showing you how to use baking soda with paint. We don't talk about which DIYs we wind up doing because we always have the same ideas. We don't talk about it. We've unsubscribed from each other's Pinterest just so that way we don't wind up doing the same thing, and we still wind up doing the same thing, even though we don't talk about which DIY each one is doing. But it's kind of funny. I mean, I guess it makes sense. We're sisters. So I'm not showing you a tutorial. I'm just using a little bit of baking soda in with this pink acrylic paint. It was paint that I had left over from a project, so I thought it would be a good one to use for here. It's cotton candy pink with some white in it to mute it even more. It's a very bland pink, and I'm adding just enough baking soda to make it kind of thick and grainy. And you'll see this when you're mixing it, depending on how much texture you want in the egg. So I wanted kind of a little bit more. I wanted it to kind of be quite rough, so I added quite a bit of the baking soda. If I would measure, I would say I added about 2 tablespoons into this little amount of paint, so quite a bit. And I'm just gonna paint this egg in the baking soda paint. When I was painting this egg, I wound up putting just a little stick into because they have little holes, so I wound up putting a little stick into the hole so that I could cover the egg completely without having to go back and redo it. So this is a good method to use. You could even put it into floral foam so that way you don't have to hold the stick, and maybe you'll have better control if you're not if you're having a hard time. But the stick is basically one of those little paint brushes that come in the craft kits that you can get from the Dollar Tree for the kids to paint. So I'm just using that as my stick. You could use a skewer or anything. That's what I had on hand. And I only do 1 coat of this paint. If you do want the full tutorial of how to use baking soda to paint, you should check out Domestic Diva's DIY channel, and it's from her video this morning. She's got a full tutorial on there. Mine was just a quick little, here's how you can do this. But I love the way the texture looks on this egg, and I'm going to be making it a speckled egg. So what I'm going to do is use some black acrylic paint and a wet brush, and I'm just going to dab the acrylic paint into the wet brush, and then I'm going to flick on from the brush. I'm going to flick on the speckle so it looks like it's a speckled egg. I'm not showing you how I did this because it makes a really big mess. So I'm using it in my utility sink, and the lighting is awful in there. It's just like it's our furnace room is where the utility sink is. So it's really dark, but I'll just flick it this way to get the speckles on there. Here are the eggs, all of them completed. I'm quite happy with the way they turned out. And here's the one with the paper books. Again, all of them turned out really cute. I just want to show you up close the texture of the pink egg. I hope that you can see the texture in here. That's what I'm trying to show you. I really like the texture of the egg. It's just a little bit different. And then for this DIY, I will be creating a little decoration, like a little egg basket decoration, using this sign from the Dollar Tree and a crate from the Dollar Tree. So what I'm doing is I'm taking apart the bunny. I am using an X-Acto knife to cut everything off. I'm cutting the head off, the arms off, and then I'll be reusing everything. Now, I tried using the X-Acto knife to cut on an angle, but it was a little bit too hard because I couldn't see from the back where to cut, and I couldn't push all the way through. I was afraid I'd break the knife. I already broke one. So I tried using the miter shears, which helped me get going, and then I just decided, you know what, I'll just cut it off straight up at the top, and then I'll just cut the little triangles out. So that's probably the easiest way. Maybe you have other tools that you can use that make it a little bit easier, but this is what I found to be the best for me with, limited amount of tools. So once that's all cut, I sand everything down just to get it to look nice and even, and then I sand off the Easter glitter as well as from the ears just to kind of make painting the ears a little bit easier, and then to make that Easter not be so shiny because I don't like the shiny look. I also wind up, after I sand everything down, I wind up painting over top of the Easter, just kind of dry brushing some white, which I'll show you. And then I do the wipe on wipe off thing that I always do with baby wipes, just to have it look a little bit more rustic. And for the paint, I am using the Rust-Oleum Chalk Linen White. I've said this in previous videos, I like to buy the big tub of it, the big paint can of it, and then it lasts me for a long time for a lot of projects. I've been doing YouTube videos for about a year, and I've been using that Rust-Oleum Chalk Linen White probably close to a year now, and this is my second paint can. But that being said, I painted 2 fireplaces with the first one, as well as a whole bunch of furniture, so it goes a really long way. It's a very good value. I paint the head in the white as well, and then I didn't bother with sanding down the nose. I was okay with it showing through a little bit because I'm going to be covering it with some burlap. So if you're ever wondering why there's like different projects that wind up kind of being in the camera view when I'm doing these, is because as they're drying, I might be doing projects for a different video. I try to craft either when my kids are sleeping, or I'll take like a Saturday morning, and that'll be kind of mom time, where for about an hour or two I just craft, and it's great therapy for me, and it's a great way for me to get these things that I've wanted to get done. But that's why sometimes you'll see different crafts that I haven't been using in my video, like those carrots, which will be for a video on Tuesday. So just kind of so you have an idea of why. It's not that I'm that messy, it's just that I'm kind of doing a whole bunch of stuff at once. And sometimes like I said, I'll be reusing it, and I put it in so I can see it, and I forget to just move it over so you guys don't see it in the camera, but I have to have it like within hand, within reach, because I'll forget about it. And so then what I'm doing with the bunny's head, which you see me doing here, is I'm actually just dry brushing some brown and some of the cashmere and some black to make him look really aged and rustic. I just make a little triangle with the burlap, and then I stick it on the bunny. I wind up doing two burlaps just to make it a little bit raised, and then I draw in the eyes with a pencil first, and then with a Sharpie hot glue everything down. And then I wind up putting everything together. I did forget to put the whiskers on. I remember after, but for the whiskers I used some twine just to make them be a little bit curly, and I just measured so that they were all the same. And then to make him be like a little basket for eggs, I attach this crate from the Dollar Tree. It's the smaller one. They have two, ones that have handles, ones that don't. This is the smaller version. And what I'm doing is just kind of trying to figure out how I'm going to set this guy in. I wind up giving the crate some legs, and then I also glue a little bit at the bottom of the head to make it a little bit raised. I thought I could get away without doing this, but he didn't look right, and then I was afraid it wouldn't stand if I did it any other way, so this is what I wound up doing. For the legs, I'm using just the tumble blocks, 4 of them. I'm going to paint them in white and hot glue them to the bottom of the crate. I'll also paint the sides of the crate in white, so because you wind up seeing that. And then I just kind of assemble everything. Once everything is attached, I put the eggs. I'm using the small carton of eggs from the Dollar Tree again, the 6 eggs. And I put little sticks on them. And this is from skewers. I just cut them in half. And then I put floral foam in the bottom of the crate so that way the eggs can stay. I don't have to glue them or anything. I just kind of push them through and they're a little bit raised and it looks like the bunny is holding the eggs. And then I attach the arms and the feet also, which I showed you here. I attached the arms and the feet on to the front of the bunny so it looks like he's holding the basket of eggs in his lap. I also add some floral moss into the basket just to give it a little bit of a festive Eastery look. For the feet, I wound up using just the triangles that I cut out and then just cut them into a shape of kind of like a foot. And I hot glued everything to the bottom and just went over with white again to make sure everything is nice and covered. And that's all there is to this guy. So he was a little bit more involved, but not too much. And again, very inexpensive, you know, $3 total to make this guy. And he looks so cute. This next DIY is also super easy to use and very inexpensive. I got these little chicks from the Dollar Tree. They were a pack of ornaments where you get 8 in a pack. I attached 6 together. I'm just gluing them one on top of the other. I saw Sandra from the show Vesna do this. She did this with a bunny, just created a thicker decoration piece for a tray. So this is what I'm doing with the chicks. And then I'm using Weld Bond to glue them together. You could use hot glue. I just decided I wanted to try this. And then I put them, you just have to make sure you line them up. So I put them one on top of the other and then I used just some clamps to attach them. And then while I did the other projects, this set, because Weld Bond doesn't take that long to set. And then once that was done, I went ahead and I used some of this paint. This is from those art kits just because I ran out of the yellow paint. And I just painted this little chick in yellow. And where the hole is for the ornament piece is great for the eye. So I just left it as is and it's displayed in my tray. Easy to make, and this guy would cost about $3 or $4 at our Dollarama. So this was under $1 and I still had some left over. Love him. And for the very last DIY, I had made this a very long time ago and I deleted the video of me painting it, but what I'm using is 3 of these foam dice from the Dollar Tree. I bought a whole bunch. You can see the video on my home channel of my haul. And I painted them in the Rust-Oleum chocolate and white. And then once they dried, I went ahead and I just dry brushed some black to the edges and just kind of all around to give it kind of a more rustic farmhousey type of look. When I dry brush, I apply the paint onto my brush and then I dab it off onto a paper towel or some sort of rag or something. And then I just wrote hop on these. Again, a great addition to your tray. You can write Easter, you can write bunny, you can even make bunnies out of these dice. Like, these dice are so versatile, and 2 in a pack for $1.25 is so cheap. So I love using these as well. It's kind of like the wood letters, but these are even a better deal. You could use a Cricut or something like that. I'm just using a Sharpie to write hop. I'm kind of imitating the skinny font. And that's all there is to it. So I did make a little bit of a mistake with the O. You can always go back and paint it over, or you can leave it as imperfect. It's up to you. I wound up going over and just kind of made everything a little bit thicker. And then so here it is. I think they turned out great. Are they perfect? Nope. Do they look great? I think so. The first DIY, I'm using these plaques that I got from Dollarama. They came in a package of, I believe, 6. And I wind up just using one of the plaques and I'm cutting it in half. And then I'm using one of the halves as a hole, and then I'm going to cut it again in half. I thought I was going to use my miter saw, but I wind up just kind of cutting it with my miter shears. And then I will be painting each of the plaques a different color. I'm using the Rust-Oleum Serenity chalk paint, cotton candy pink acrylic paint, and warm white acrylic paint. After I clean them up, I go ahead and I paint them. And then I use these wooden dowels, square wooden dowels, as my frame around, and I just cut them to size. I wind up staining each of the pieces of dowel in the Rust-Oleum glaze in Java. I love using this as a stain, and all I do is either I use a sponge or just a rag to put it on. Usually I'll do a sponge and then I wipe it off with a rag, which is what I've done here. Then I just hot glue all of these down to fit my frame. For these other two, I wound up having to kind of modify the frame parts a little bit because I ran out of the square dowels. I wouldn't have had enough to make all of them the same, so I wound up using just scrap pieces of wood that I cut into about the shape of the other square dowels. I should have bought 2 packs at Dollarama. Hopefully they have it next time I go because they're proving to be really, really good. I've gotten lots of use out of them. Once I glued the frames down, I wound up writing in Hoppy Easter Hip and Hop on each of the different frames. Sometimes I use a pencil and then I go over top with a Sharpie, sometimes I don't. I'm still working on my my Ray Done mock font. I don't always want to use my Cricuts, like especially for things that are this small. I tend to like to just write it in. So, practice makes perfect. If you just take your time, you wind up doing a good job on it. And here's what they looked like, all finished. I'm going to be displaying these in my tray, and I'll have that over on my home channel. So if you have some time, stop over on my home channel and check it out. The video will be out by probably middle of next week. And I'm really happy with they turned out. I think they're very cute and they'll go nicely in my little tray. For my next DIY, this is even simpler than the previous one. I'm just writing, again, in my Ray Done font, carrots on this clay pot. The clay pot I bought at the Dollar Tree. It was a pack of 2 for $1.25. I'm in Canada. Well, actually, it might be $1.50 now. I'm in Canada, and our Dollar Tree is $1.25. Used to be. Now there's items that are $1.50 and items that are $1.25. So it just depends. I use my pencil and then I go over top of the pencil with a Sharpie, and then I'm going to put some moss into this pot. First I use the green moss at the bottom and then I cover it with some brown moss. You could use floral foam if you wanted to, and then just put a little bit of the brown moss on top to act like dirt. It's up to you. And then I'm putting one of those snowballs from Dollarama that you can get. I'm pretty sure you can get all year long, as the bunny's body. And I'm cutting some felt feet onto it, gluing it down. And I'm using a little piece of fur that I got from from Dollarama. And it was just left over. And I'm popping it on as the tail. And then I'm just adding some carrots that I picked up at the Dollar Tree as well into the pot and putting the body in, and that's all there is to this DIY. If you wanted to make sure that the body stayed, you could put a skewer into the snowball and then use the floral foam. Mine's going to go in a tray, no one's going to touch it, so I don't need to have it be in there secure or glued down or anything like that. And that's all there is to this DIY. I think it turned out really cute. Another item for my tray. I'm so excited to use this. I have a whole carrot theme going on. So this next project that I'm going to show you isn't really a DIY. It's actually the easiest thing you could do. I found these blank eggs at Dollarama. They kind of have like a chalky finish. They're plastic, but they have a chalky finish. And I'm just writing hippity hop and bunny on them. Really easy, really simple. I just wanted to show you in case you were thinking of maybe getting some of these eggs that are already pre-done and quite pricey. This is a cheaper way of doing it. I think it was $2 for the carton of eggs, so 12 eggs. And I'm using 3 of them. I've already used a few in a different project, and then I'm going to be saving a few to use with my kiddos. They actually come with some dye, so I'll be using that with them as well. But I thought this was a great way to use these. So if you wanted something just to fill your tray, this is a great way to do it. I've seen spring, home, welcome, all sorts of things written on them. So I just wanted to show you how I did these. Like I said, it's not really a DIY. It's kind of just like like a refresh, I guess, or like a repurpose. So here they are all finished. And this last DIY is a little bit more involved, but still very easy and inexpensive. I'm using the strainers from Dollarama. They're just the mini strainers, some felt, and some paint. I'm going to be using some, and a little bit of rope. I'm going to be using warm white and metallic acrylic paint. And that's it. Very easy, and some hot glue. So I removed the packaging, and all I'm doing is hot gluing them one into the other to make it look like a bunny head with its ears. And then I'm going to be painting it first in the warm white, then I'm going to smush it a little bit with my fingers, and I'm going to add some metallic, and then I'll add a little bit of warm white just to get kind of like a more antiqued age look to this bunny. Once the bunny dries, I use some felt to cover his ears. So just use white felt, and what I do is I cut around, and then I make a little bit of a bigger piece because I realize that this is a little bit too tight. So I make a bit of a bigger piece, and then I use that white piece to measure how big I need the pink piece to be for the ear. Then I add some felt for the nose, and I use a foam because I didn't have black felt, so I use foam strips for his whiskers, black foam. Originally, I was just going to use a bit of cotton for his nose, but then I decided to use the felt as I thought the cotton was too big. And that's all there is to this one, other than his little bow, which I made out of that jute rope, or sorry, the nautical rope that I got. And he's gonna look great on my tray as well. All I did for the bow was I just tied it into just like a nice little bow, kind of like you would with your shoelace. And that's all there is to this guy. I'm using this old can, and now the can was previously painted with a whole bunch of colors. I think it was like blue and green and a little bit of purple. So I'm painting over top of it with pumpkin orange acrylic paint. Now I am not covering this completely 100%, so it's a solid cover because I want the can to look aged. I was going to use a different can, but I just didn't have one open, so I don't want to waste any food or anything like that. So if you have a can, and obviously you don't have to go and paint it all sorts of different colors underneath, but if you wanted that look, then paint it dark green and blue and a little bit of purple and black and just kind of smush all those colors together. Or you can paint it with this pumpkin orange and then go dry brush over top with a little bit of black acrylic paint, then dab off with a paper towel, or even you can use decorative glaze or wax over top of it. That'll give you that aged look. So for my second coat, because I did cover it once, and then the second coat that I did, I just dabbed on the paint, and this just gave it a little bit of a better coverage with some of that dark and kind of dirty, rustic rustiness peeking through, which if you've been to my channel before, you've seen that I love the rustic look. So a lot of my decor pieces are that way. My house is decorated that way. My furniture is that way. I love it. And I just think it's perfectly imperfect. That's why I love it, because then if, you know, I have small kiddos, so if it gets dinged, it's okay because, hey, that adds to the look, I guess. Anyway, so once that dries, I have taken from my children this little piece of play food. It's not a piece, but it's one piece, but 3 carrots, and it's from their play food. I believe I got this at IKEA when my first son was born. They don't really play with this anymore, so I'm using it in my tier tray, which I love doing. I love taking some of the stuff that I bought for them, like toys, and kind of reusing it in home decor, repurposing it. So what I'm doing is I'm attaching these little pieces of the Christmas tree, and it's the Dollar Tree Christmas tree, and it's a branch from it. So I've just cut it into a few pieces, and I'm using it as the green part of my carrot. Obviously, you can use any floral for this. I just had this piece laying around, so I'm on this big kick of trying not to buy craft supplies because I have so many, and it gets really expensive. I mean, even though it's all Dollar Tree, but if you're spending $100, $200 at the Dollar Tree every couple months or every month or whatever on craft supplies, it gets really expensive. So I'm trying to reuse everything I have, including their toys, and not bring any more stuff into the house too. On top of it being expensive, it's also more and more stuff, and then I find it overwhelming. So I'm trying. So anyway, I hot glue these down. What I did was I bent them a little bit so that I could have like a flat piece to glue it on. And then I will be adding this to that can to make it look like it's a can of carrots. So once this sets, I go ahead and I take my can and I just do a rough outline, kind of like a rectangle outline, but as you can see, I'm not making it perfect. I want it to look like it's been swooshed on, using white acrylic paint, and it's the antique white, or yes, antique white from, no, sorry, it's warm white, but it reminds me of antique white, warm white acrylic paint from the Dollar Tree. I let that dry, and then I stuff this with just some wrapping paper, like the brown paper, and I put moss on top. And then I just stick my carrots in there, and that's all there is to it. I did, once that dried, I did write in just freehand with a Sharpie, carrots 5 cents. You could obviously use a Cricut if you wanted to. I just chose to use it freehand because I felt like it would add to that rustic aged look, like this has been around for a really long time. And I mean, I really should have put carrots $5 with the price of food right now, but anyway, carrots 5 cents. So here it is. Love the way it turned out. For DIY number 2, I have this little tube. It's from foil, I believe, so it's a little bit of a harder tube. And obviously, there's so many ways to make these, but this is what I'm using. This is how I'm doing it. Take it or leave it. I found this to be really easy and something that everyone can have around the house. So I am just cutting this into into 2 pieces, and then at the bottom I'm cutting it into a kind of triangle pointy piece at the bottom. Then I'm covering it with that pumpkin orange paint because I will be wrapping it in burlap, and I didn't want the white showing through. This is an extra step that you don't have to do. You could just triple wrap it and it probably wouldn't show through, but I thought this would make the piece a little bit nicer. So once I roughly paint that and it dries, then I take my burlap and I just wrap it up to make this look like a carrot. Now, there's just a little tricky part, and there's a reason why I left all of this in the video. I know it's kind of long, but you have to fidget around with it so the bottom looks like a triangle, so it goes, so it looks like a carrot where it's like a long triangle. So just fidget around with it and get it to look that way. I did wind up with the second one. I did it in 2 pieces, so I wrapped up until I got to the pointy part, and then there I kind of narrowed it down and I hot glued it that way. But I like to show this because sometimes I find that when I watch DIY videos, or even like sometimes on HGTV or whatever, whenever you watch people make stuff, sometimes they make it look really, really easy because you're trying to kind of speed it up and whatever, but then like you go to do it and you're like, wow, this isn't working. What did I miss, right? So I wanted to show you that I did fidget around with it too, that it's not just, oh, I wrapped it up and now it looks like a carrot, because look at that. It doesn't look like a carrot. So cut it in pieces, adjust it at the bottom to make it look like a triangle, make it a little bit longer than your piece, And you'll get there. You'll just have to fidget around with it. Now, the burlap I did get from the Dollar Tree last fall. They had brown, orange, and red burlap. And I think they had green too, although I couldn't find my little green one. Maybe I used it up. But I bought them then because they don't have them all year long. And last year when I did my carrot themed, I'm all about the carrots for Easter, when I did my carrot themed tray pieces as well, I colored my own burlap. So if you want to watch that video, I can link it here. But I colored the burlap to make it orange. But this time, that was very time consuming. So if you can find orange burlap or whatever color burlap you want, buy it. If not, if it's too expensive and you have tons of burlap at home, that's an option too. So anyway, I wrapped these up, and sorry, you may have noticed that it had a little bit of brown on it, this burlap. It's because it got wet and I had something else in there that leaked like dye. The fabric leaked dye, so it colored it a little bit. And for the top part of the carrot, once I get my shape to be the way that I want it to be, the top of the carrot I used green burlap, and I told you I couldn't find my green burlap. I did have burlap that I purchased at Michael's for last year. They still had the 40% off coupon, so I bought it for 40% off, and it was a big roll of burlap, and I just used a little piece of it for the top. You can also use, if you have green string, like if you have knitting string or if you have any kind of jute rope that's green or anything like that, you could use that for the top as well. But I had the burlap, so I wanted to use the burlap. And I also, like I said, I cut the green burlap into strips, and then I hot glued everything into the hole at the top because it was a tube that I used underneath. So I put the green burlap into the hole and I hot glued everything together. Be careful to not burn yourself like I did. My son was watching me do this and he just kept saying, "Mommy, be careful, you're going to burn your fingers." And I did. But anyway, so that's all there is to this one. Let me know what you think of the finished pieces. I think they're really cute. And last but not least, this is kind of, I mean, I don't want to say it's a DIY because it's kind of just like a makeover. So I'm using these eggs that came from a piece of Easter decor from many years ago. I think it was one of those branches that has eggs instead of flowers. And I always keep these things because, like I said, I'm trying really hard to reuse things, and I know that I'll use them eventually. So I'm just painting it in that warm white. And so I wind up doing about 3 coats of this just to get it to cover really nicely because it has the glitter on top, so it kept on coming through. And once I get that coverage, then I want them to kind of look like they're speckled eggs. So I take some black acrylic paint and I kind of flick a brush at it, and then I notice that my little brush is not good enough. So I wind up using a bigger brush. And I kind of do the same idea. I flick even with the bigger brush, but then the bigger brush is an old brush that the bristles are actually quite hard. I probably didn't wash it properly. So it makes it perfect because then I just dab the spots on it as well. Obviously, like I said, there's many ways of doing any of these things. This is what I chose to do. Sometimes I do what's quickest, what I have on hand, or basically it's kind of whatever's around. And if I see them, I think, oh yeah, no, I can use this. So anyway, that's what I did with these. And then I took one of these cloches, I took off the sticker, and I don't ever understand why stores, sorry, why stores do this and stick such large stickers onto glass things that you're supposed to use as decor pieces, because sometimes it's really hard to remove them. This one wasn't too bad, but like I said, you know, put it at the bottom or put a smaller sticker. I don't know. It doesn't have to have this ginormous sticker. Anyway, I used some of that same moss. I put it at the bottom, and then I put my eggs in it. I wound up doing one more egg, which I didn't show you the video, but it's the same idea. And I put them in here just lightly, and I close the cloche, and that'll be a perfect little tray piece, which you can use for summer, for fall, for Christmas. So it'll be one that I can reuse many times. I was going to use that carrot that I just showed you, but I decided against it. And that's all there is to this. I'm going to be using this Happy Easter sign from the Dollar Tree, which I purchased for $1.25 because our Dollar Tree is $1.25 here. And I'm going to be using it to create a nice little hop sign. And what's great about this is I'm going to reuse the whole sign. I'm going to take it apart, but I'm going to reuse the whole sign, so that way none of it will go to waste. I start with removing the staples from the back to get the little rope off. I thought I would keep the rope, but then I wound up cutting it after. It doesn't really matter how you take it out. I just decided to do it this way, thinking that I might even use the other side too for something. I didn't wind up using it, but you can take it out any way you want. I'm just taking it apart carefully, and then I'm going to be filling the holes at all the holes at the front with some putty, just so that they are covered. I'm going to be taking the nose off. I thought I would be able to leave the face as is, but when I took the nose off and the little bow, some of it peeled off, so I wound up painting it. I did remove the nose carefully because I wanted to be able to keep it, but even if I was careful, the glue was really stuck on there, so it did take off some of the paint. So I just wound up sanding it down and painting it white. You will most likely have to do that as well, unless you're lucky and it doesn't take well, not even the paint, it's whatever that paper is that's on there off. You want to make sure you sand it off because it'll smooth off wherever the paper came off, so it's somewhat even, and so it doesn't show too much when you paint it. And I'm just using the Rust-Oleum Chalk Linen White paint to paint over this bunny. Once I have this bunny painted, I go ahead and I paint the letters. I bought these wooden letters at the Dollar Tree. I bought an H and a P. However, I didn't actually buy an H. I bought an N, which we wound up cutting with my husband, and I wound up gluing it to make an H. So what he did was he cut off the middle part of the N, and then I just flipped the sides over because the way the N is. And he cut down the middle part to make it look like an H. I just measured out how big this P was, and that's what I did. And I just used some wood glue to glue it together. I did this because I could not find an H anywhere, so I wound up just doing it this way. And then I also painted out a paint stick, and I used one of the longer ones that I had from a project, and I painted it out white because that'll be the base for my hop. So here I just show you how I glued it, and this is what I mean by I flipped it over so that the top you would see the nice edges of the N, and then the bottom, as you can see, he just could not cut it for it to look this way, so I told him to just leave it and that I would cover the bottom so you wouldn't be able to see it. It's obviously better if you can find the H, but I went to two Dollar Trees and they did not have it, so I just improvised. I could have also used maybe like cardboard and just cut a few pieces and glued them together for the H and the P, but I decided to do it this way. So after I've painted and dried everything, I go ahead and I distress the sign, and I'm just using some black acrylic paint, and I'll just be putting a little bit on the brush and dabbing it off to give it that aged look. And as you can see, I did not paint the whole bunny sign really well. I left it kind of roughly painted, and that was because I was going to be distressing and just added to it. Now I did add a little bit of white into the black just so it wasn't such a strong black color, so it was a little bit lighter, maybe like a really dark gray. And then I just go ahead and I distress the sides and all over the bunny, as well as the letters and the base. I also distress the carrots a little bit with that black just to have them kind of match the distressed look of the bunny. And I distressed the base, the paint stir stick as well. I start with attaching the nose because that's going to be my center, and from there I know where I need to draw the eyes and how big I need to make them, as well as the whiskers. I'm just using a black Sharpie to do this. If you are talented enough, you can use a brush. I'm not very good with the fine point brushes. Maybe I don't have good ones. They always kind of wind up looking a little bit sloppy. You could also use, if you want to cut out vinyl stickers, you could do that as well. But this was just as easy and it was very simple to do. Once I did my distressing, I attached the letters and the bunny. I attached the first letter so I could see where I wanted and how much room I needed for the bunny. And then I attached the second letter. Now the bunny was kind of falling down just on its own. So then I added these little cubes from the Dollar Tree on the back, and I did them quite high just so that the bunny would stick a little bit better. I did use a combination of wood glue and hot glue to attach the bunny, and then I just hot glued the carrots. But as you can see, when I flipped over, that's where I found out that I needed a bit more, and I just kind of made a base for the bunny at the bottom, and then I just built them up a little bit. And that helped the bunny stay. If you're finding that this isn't working, what you could do, so because you can see I played around with it quite a bit, what you could do is build out that bottom part with 2 tumble block pieces of wood and just glue those on and have the bunny stick to that, and then that way it's sticking to a flat surface rather than the round trying to stick to the base. But I didn't have any tumble blocks, so this is what I did. And like I said, once I played around with it a bit and built it up a bit more, it did wind up sticking. And that's all there is to this DIY. It cost around $3, very inexpensive, and I think it looks really cute. And it's something that you could find at like a Winners or a Marshall's for sure. That would be definitely a lot more than $3. So here it is. I absolutely love the way it turned out. Let me know what you think. So this next DIY is not a Dollar Tree DIY, but it's a Trash to Treasure DIY, which you could easily make a Dollar Tree DIY. But what I did was I used these wooden blocks that I had from a different project, and I wanted to use these little bunnies too, but they were too big for the pieces of wood that I had. So what I'm doing actually is just taking one of the bunnies, and I'm going to be cutting it out, but a lot smaller than what the actual drawing is. And I'm drawing it on just this transfer paper, or sorry, shelf liner that I have from the Dollar Tree, and I'm basically using it as a stencil. I could have used my Cricut and done it with a Cricut, but I decided in case you guys don't have a Cricut, this is a way that you could do it easily. And I will be using this as a stencil, and I'll just be, because it's sticky, so I'll be sticking it to each of the blocks and then painting the blocks different colors, but you'll see what I do. But if you didn't have wood, you could easily use one of the dice from the Dollar Tree, or sometimes they have little coasters that are ceramic, so you could use those. Really anything you could use that you can find that's a square shape from the Dollar Tree. They even have the little Rubik's cubes that I've painted before in the past too. So really it's anything that you can find that's this shape, and you could also glue many pieces of cardboard together to get the shape. So, and I think the Dollar Tree in the States has more wood type of things than our Dollar Tree does, because I know I've seen some people use the little pallet wood for things, which you could, like the little mini pallets, which you could use for this as well. But anyway, this was a piece of a 2x4 that I had, and I just cut it into 3 pieces. But it wasn't the full 2x4, it was just a little scrap piece that I had left over. So I was originally going to make them all one pale pink color, but then I decided that I wanted to make them different colors. But for the pink color, I had mixed some of the cotton candy pink with a little bit of black, just to make it kind of just a more pale kind of, I want to say like a dirty pink, but I don't know how else to describe it. But it's just a little bit of black mixed with pink, and it's just to give it a little bit of a more rustic look, I think. But so I'm not painting them fully because I wanted the bunny. So I'm painting one of the blocks in a combination of this lime green and forest green, and then the other block will just be a gray color, and it was just some black and white that I mixed together. And it's just to achieve a little bit of a more pastel-y green and a pastel grayish black color. And I just paint the blocks again, not the whole thing because I'm adding that stencil, and I just want the little green to be peeking out. And the gray. So here they are all painted out, and then what I do is I go ahead and I just stick the bunny on, and then I paint over the blocks in this chocolate and white paint, and that's all there is to that. Let them dry. So in case you guys haven't been to my channel before, again, my name is Vesna, and this is my main channel. On this channel I do DIYs, thrift flips, furniture flips, trash to treasures, Dollar Tree DIYs, basically any kind of DIY home decor on a budget is what you can find here. It could be seasonal, it could be things that you could use for around the house, anything like that, or any furniture that I can find that would fit into my decor. I do it and I make it over. So that's the kind of stuff you like. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. I have two other channels. I have a cooking channel and a home channel. So if you want to see how I display these things, head on over to my home channel, and that's where I do all of my decorating. I actually have a video coming out on Wednesday. Two videos. I have one on my DIY channel and one on my home channel, and it's a St. Patrick's Day themed DIY and decor. So if you're interested, come on back on Wednesday. If you haven't subscribed to my channels, hit that big subscribe button, hit the notification bell, give me a thumbs up, let me know that you stopped by. I would love to hear from you. So again, once they dried, I just wanted to distress them so they kind of matched all of the different pieces that I made. So what I did was I just added a little bit of that gray-black combo that I had left over, and I just dry brushed the edges just to distress them a little bit. So here they all are all finished. These will be great either on my mantle or in one of my trays. I haven't decided yet, but I love them so much. So this next DIY is another simple DIY. It is a Dollar Tree DIY. So I'm using these jumbo craft sticks as well as the bunny form, all from the Dollar Tree. The bunny form came in a pack of 8, 9, I believe. A big pack of them, and the jumbo craft sticks come in a pack of 20, I think, or 18. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be making kind of like a little sign from this. So I'm using 2, 4, 6, I believe, 6 craft sticks, one over top of the other, and then another 2 on the sides. And I will be hot gluing everything together, and then I'm going to be staining it using my Rust-Oleum Rust-Oleum decorative glaze in Java. I will just clarify, I added one more jumbo craft stick, and I'm going to be using 7 craft sticks plus the 2 on the side, so 9 altogether. And I will be staining everything, and then I'll be painting everything. Now, I wanted the front to have the little sticks on the side, so I just went to make it a little bit stronger. I put some popsicle sticks on the back just to kind of reinforce the little sign. And then I'm going to be covering the bunny in this buffalo check in black and white, this checkered pattern in black and white. I got this at the Dollar Tree as well. I got it around Christmas time. I don't know if they have it all year long, but I picked it up then. And I'm just going to be Mod Podging him in this fabric. So what I'm going to do is just cut out a piece as close to what I need as I can, and then I'll Mod Podge it and just kind of glue the excess on the back and cut it out as close as I can to the edge. So I put Mod Podge on the bottom of the fabric and on top of the fabric once I've put it on the wood, so like on the bottom of the wood, and then I put it on top of the fabric. So just make sure you let this dry off before you try to work with it, because sometimes it gets a little bit sticky. So then I go ahead and I paint over top of the sides. I just want it to look like it's framed in this little picture. So I add some white paint, but I'm putting the white paint in a container that had black paint in it, so it's not completely white. It'll give it that little grayish white color, and because I'm painting over top of the brown, it just gives a really kind of rustic feel. And I've also attached some jute rope at the top, just with some glue, hot glue, just in the back at the top, so that if you wanted to hang this, you could. If you just wanted it as a decoration, you could. I will most likely be using this in my tray. So you could leave the sides as is with the white grayish paint, but I decided that I want this to look like it's truly framed in, so I wound up adding another 2 craft sticks, so you actually need 11 on top, and doing the same thing, stain and paint, as I did with the other one. I just think it gives it a little bit more of a complete look, but you could do it either way. I then just make a little burlap bow out of burlap ribbon that has, the adhesive burlap ribbon. I'm using this because it was the thinness that I wanted, I guess, and I thought it would stick, but doesn't stick the best, so even if you use regular burlap, it would be fine. And I just make a tiny little bow at the top, and I add some greenery to it just to give it a little bit of more of a spring touch. And the greenery that I'm adding, I don't know what it's called. It's from the Dollar Tree. It comes in like a little bunch, like a little pick. I also add some of that checkered fabric into it too, to make it look like it's like a true bow with dimension. So I still wanted to add a little bit more detail to the bunny, so I add like a little bow to the bunny. The bow is made out of twine, and I just kind of wrap some twine around in a loop, and twist it to make it look like a bow, and I hot glue it to the bunny's, like around the bunny's neck, so it looks like the bunny's wearing a little bow. So here is the finished piece. Let me know what you think of him. For the very last DIY, I'm using some more scrap wood. I just have these little, if you've watched my videos before, you saw that my husband brought me back these little small planks of wood that came in some sort of packaging that they were throwing out at his work. So I just cut one little leftover piece in half, and I am painting it out in a mixture of this cashmere tan acrylic paint, which I've put into that little container where I had the black paint, so it kind of gives a little bit of a darker brown paint. And I wanted to show you this because I'm using it kind of like a stain. So I'm putting it on, I put it on liberally, and then I'm taking a wet wipe and I'm just wiping it off so it looks like it's staining the wood in this light brown color. I'm using these bunnies again, and I am just taking a piece of shelf liner and I am covering them in this, I'm covering the bunny in this shelf liner, cutting it as close as I can to the actual bunny so it takes its shape. And that's all there is to it. I've chosen this diamond pattern teal and white shelf liner because I think it's a very nice Easter color. And then I'm also doing it in one of these floral black and white shelf liners. These are all shelf liners that I had left over from other projects, so I didn't have to purchase them. And I'm just gonna hot glue the bunny down, and I'll wrap each piece of wood, one at the top, one at the bottom, in twine. And again, that's all there is to these projects. Really easy. It cost me, well, under $1 really, because these wood bunnies come in a pack for $1.25, and the twine comes in a big roll, and I only used a little bit, and the shelf liner I had on hand. So after I get everything glued on, I just want to make it a little bit lighter and look a little bit more distressed. So I add some of the warm white acrylic paint onto the wood plank as well, just to give it a little bit more color. And I do the same for the other piece. I think I had said that the other piece was going to be the black and white shelf liner, but it's black and white floral scrapbook paper. But they do have shelf liner like this as well. I just didn't have any on hand. And I wanted this color, so I'm just Mod Podging this one to the bunny, same way I did in the previous project, and then cutting it to size. So here they are all finished. I think these ones are really cute too. Again, you can use them anywhere. I will likely be using them in my tier tray decor. And I just love the way they turned out. Let me know what you think. so the first dupe are these speckled metallic silver eggs that I recreated using Dollarama eggs. And what I did was I had actually from last year, but 6 leftover paintable eggs. They're just plastic eggs. And what I did is I dabbed on some black acrylic paint and some silver metallic acrylic paint to make them look galvanized. And then I also added some white just in case I added a bit too much of the silver or too much of the black. It's just kind of, it's one of those things when you do it, you just dab, dab, dab until you get the color that you're looking for. If you're interested in other videos that I've made with the galvanized look, I'll post one up here for you and you can just check it out. And I did that with these eggs as well. Now, the only difference with these ones, usually I add blue so it looks kind of more like the galvanized look, but this one I wanted it to look like metal, but kind of rusty metal. So I saw on Simple Roots, Simple Living channel, Jamie created a rusty look as well, and she just added a little bit of orange. I have done the rusty look before where I added this gilding copper that I had from Michael's, but it's quite expensive. I ran out of it. Well, part of it dried out, but I ran out of most of it. I had a little tiny bit left, but it is quite expensive. So this kind of did the trick with the orange, and you'll just see what I do. I kind of dab everything on, and once I'm done, then I go with that same dabber that has the black and the silver and white on it. I add a little bit of the orange, and then I dab off the excess, and then I go over top of the egg just to give it a little bit of like a hint of rust. And you may have to go back and add a bit more of the white, black, or silver, depending on how you want it to look and how much you've gotten on each egg, because I am using the same dabber for all the paints. They all look slightly different, which is exactly the look I was going for, but if you want them to be super uniform, I suggest use a different different dabber for each color. And so here they are all finished. I'm really excited to be using them as accent pieces in my tray decor, and I may even use it in one of my cloches. So let me know what you think, and here's the dupe, and let me know if you think I nailed it. Leave me a comment below. So the next DIY is, again, another Kirkland's dupe. This one is $17, a little Easter egg hunt sign, and I had one of these cocktails this way signs from the Dollar Tree, which I recreated to kind of look like this sign. So what I did first was I was going to use some white chalk paint, and then I decided it didn't look right, so I'm using a warm white. But before I go ahead and apply that, I just do a light sanding with leftover sandpaper from the Dollar Tree. And it's just to rough it up a little bit. So again, I don't wind up using this white that you can see me here applying. And the reason I left this in the clip was because you'll see the white when I start painting the other color. So I wanted you guys to know where it came from. And I did apply 2 coats of this. The first coat was very rough, and then I sanded it down slightly, and then I added another coat. And it just to give it a little bit of a smoother finish rather than to see all of those brush strokes. And I let it dry thoroughly, and then I made it a little bit kind of rustic looking by adding some cashmere brown paint, and I just dry brushed it on the edges and all over the piece. Once I made it as rough as, as antique or rustic looking as I wanted, then I went ahead and I just used the Cricut font. So when you open your design space, there's that automatic font that comes up. So I used that font and I wrote Easter egg hunt, and I just sized it to fit to fit the vinyl that I had that was this color, and also to fit this piece, obviously. So it's just a little bit under 2 inches tall, and all the whole word together is 10 inches long. And then I just applied, using some transfer paper, I put it on the sign, and I went over top with that cashmere paint to also kind of rough up and antique the words as well. And again, another cute little sign for my tray. You could also use it in a vignette if you wanted to, but really, really super cute and very inexpensive to make. $1.25, and scrap pieces of vinyl. You don't even have to have vinyl. If you had shelf liner and you just wanted to paint in the words using your Cricut, you could do that. And you can also find some letters at the Dollar Tree as well, and you could probably glue those on as well. You could freehand write it, so many options, but definitely cheaper than the $17 at Kirkland's. So here's the finished piece. And again, if you don't want to antique it, you don't have to. I wanted it to be antique like the sign, but let me know what you think of it. Did I nail this dupe? Did I not nail it? What do you think? Leave me a comment below. And if you haven't had a chance to hit that subscribe button and that bell so that you can see when I post new videos. I post every Sunday, but anyway, this way it'll notify you in case you forget. This little sign here, this was $70. Now it is bigger than what I made, but mine cost less than $1 because I'm using one of the pages, it's April, from the calendar, the Dollar Tree calendar, the Farmer's Fresh calendar from the Dollar Tree. And it's, like I said, the month of April, and I'm using a piece of cardboard that my husband saved for me. It's a nice thick piece of cardboard, and I'm just going to Mod Podge it on and cut it out to size, and then I'm going to use some jute rope and put it around the picture just to give it a little bit more of a finished look and to hide the cardboard edges. And that's all there is to this one. And I just use hot glue to wrap the jute rope around. And again, I didn't use the whole spool of the jute rope, so that's why this one cost, I'm going to put $1.25 because I used the page from the calendar and the jute rope, but it was definitely less than $1.25. And it'll make a great little vignette piece, maybe in the corner on my fireplace or on one of my chests in the hall, like my dresser in the hall, or maybe my buffet in the dining room. Let me know what you think of this one. I think he's really, really cute, and I definitely think that I nailed this one as well. Let me know what you think. Here they are, all 3 of them. Very cute, very easy dupes. If you just wanted some quick decor for Easter and don't have a Kirkland's, I don't have a Kirkland's here where I'm in Ontario, so we don't have a Kirkland's here, so I can't even buy them even if I wanted to. But let's say you can buy them, but you don't want to spend the money. Here's a great way to recreate these dupes. Let me know what you guys think. Leave me a comment below, and we'll see you next week on Sunday at 4 for another episode, and it'll be another Easter episode. Thank you so much. Have a great day and stay safe, everyone. Made it to the end of this super long mega video, but it was enjoyable, I'm sure. Thank you so much for enjoying this video. Have a great day and see you in the next episode.